Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on transferring from ARP to the SERS hybrid plan. This is Steve Cohen, President of the 4Cs. Okay, so let's talk about transferring from ARP to the SERS hybrid plan. Before we even get to the details of the SERS hybrid plan, let's think for a minute about ARP and SERS. The ARP is a certain kind of plan. The alternate retirement plan is a defined contribution plan. Many of you are going to be in the ARP already, and you know what that means is you set aside 5% of your earnings and the state contributes 8%. And that money then becomes yours. You then have to invest it, and at some point in the future, that money will be available to you to draw down for retirement purposes. It is portable, and that is the strength of this kind of retirement plan. On the other hand, SERS, the State Employee Retirement System, is a defined benefit plan. It is what we call a pension, and its benefit is based on a combination of years of service and earnings, and a complex formula determines the benefit that an individual receives after that individual retires. Now we get to the hybrid and the focus of this particular presentation. What are the main features of the hybrid? Well, the hybrid is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a combination of SERS and the ARP. And so when you leave state service, the employee now will have the option of accepting the SERS benefit amount. That is a defined benefit identical to one of the SERS tiers, either Tier 2 or Tier 2A, or for those folks who are hired after July 1, 2011, Tier 3, or doing in effect what the ARP allows you to do, take your money and go away. That is cash out. And cashing out in the hybrid means taking your individual contribution to the hybrid plan plus a 5% employer match plus 4% interest. Now, let me go back to the first one of those items for a second, the SERS benefit amount. The benefit's identical to Tier 2, Tier 2A, and Tier 3. Well, we know that Tier 3 is what people are in if they're hired after July 1st, 2011. What determines whether you're in Tier 2 or Tier 2A? It's when you're hired. So for those folks who are hired on or after July 1st, 1997, but prior to July 1st, 2011, you're in Tier 2A. If you're hired prior to July 1st, 1997, you're going to be in Tier 2. Okay? Your contribution to the hybrid is going to be whatever it would be under the SERS tier that's appropriate for you, plus 3%. So for Tier 2, the employee contribution is 0. So for the hybrid, that would mean it would be 3%. For Tier 2A and for Tier 3, the employee contribution is 2%. So you add the 3% of the hybrid, that means it would be a total of 5%. Okay? So the Tier 2A and Tier 3 folks would be paying 5% to participate in the hybrid. That's exactly what folks pay now as their employee contribution to participate in the ARP. Now, one other important piece of this. Even if you cash out under the hybrid, the rules of SERS are such that you have to convert part of the cash out option to a periodic payment to protect your retiree health insurance. There has to be some monthly payment the retiree receives in order to also receive retiree health insurance. You've also heard that there's something called the SAG Award, the CBAC ARP Grievance Award. Well, what's that and how does it compare with the hybrid? The CBAC ARP Grievance Award allows folks in the ARP to transfer directly to SERS Tier 2 or Tier 2A, depending on when they were hired. And for those folks, the employee contribution would be the same as it would be for folks who are already in Tier 2 or Tier 2A. There would be no extra 3% as it would be under the hybrid. There would be no new defined benefit cash out option. Okay? And funds used to purchase past service are only partially protected in the event of death. So there's a significant difference. In the ARP, you contribute 5% of your wages, and the employer matches it with 8% for a total of 13%. So we think of it in terms of thirteenths. And so 5/13ths of the funds in your ARP account are treated like employee contributions. And in this case, the remainder of that other 8% would be forfeited. In the hybrid, all the funds used for purchase are protected. And although they're not matched by the employer, they do earn 4% from the date of purchase. So that's a difference between the SAG award and the hybrid. Should you expire prior to the point at which you're either vested or prior to the point at which you retire. Well, what about the SAG award? What's going on with it? Well, the issue there is the IRS. And the IRS has to rule on whether it is possible to transfer from the ARP to the Tier 2 or Tier 2A and then buy back time, and whether that is permissible under the tax codes. We're waiting for the IRS to rule. It's called a private letter ruling. That's going to take, as long as the IRS takes to issue that private letter ruling, there is no way to predict exactly how long that's going to take. The request went in this past summer. It can take up to, well, it can take a year and a half, 2 years, maybe more, maybe less. Historically, it's taken a year and a half to 2 years to get the IRS to issue a private letter ruling. So it's going to take some time for the SAG award option to be adjudicated by the IRS. And so the hybrid will remain open, and it will remain open for 90 days following the private letter ruling given by the IRS on the SAG award. So however long the IRS takes, even if it's another 2 years, then the hybrid will be open for 2 years and 90 days. So that folks will have time to decide what to do. What are options for folks? Well, the obvious option is to do nothing and stay in the ARP. Okay. The next option, move to the hybrid prospectively. In other words, from the present forward. The third option is to move to the hybrid and transfer funds to purchase past service credit. In other words, to move prospectively and to buy back your past service time. Okay. So to try to move completely into the hybrid so that your ARP account in effect disappears. And then, of course, you can wait for the IRS ruling and then decide what to do that time. By the way, the SAG award will also allow you to move both prospectively and to keep funds in the ARP, and also to move prospectively and to buy past service time. For the remainder of our brief presentation today, we're going to focus on the third option, that is moving to the hybrid and transferring funds to purchase past service credit. To find out how much it's going to cost to purchase past service credit, an estimator is going to be available on the controller's website. That's what was supposed to be available April 1st. That's what we learned this past Monday isn't going to be available for a couple of weeks, quote unquote. And PACE, which is sometimes called the PACER, is what you're going to see on the controller's website to allow you to estimate what it's going to cost to do your own past service credit purchase. what can you use in terms of funds to purchase your past service credit? And this is interesting because obviously the funds in your ARP account are available for that purchase. But also available are funds you've rolled into your ARP account from other retirement accounts. So if you've had other kinds of state service, if you've had other kinds of municipal service that have involved funds you've been able to roll into your ARP account, as long as the monies are in your ARP account, you'll be able to use them to purchase service credit. Now, TIA CREF encumbered funds, which we'll talk about in a minute, will be available to use for purchasing of past service credit. And also available will be funds in your other state-sponsored retirement savings plans, your 457 and 403B accounts. So what about this TIA CREF encumbered funds business? The TIA traditional annuity has a contract that allows folks to only withdraw 10% per year. And so the hybrid plan is going to allow us, those of us with TIA accounts, to use those funds to purchase our service credit time. However, we have to deal with the fact that we're only withdrawing 10% per year. Those funds are encumbered. The problem is the TIA traditional annuity has a guaranteed rate of return of just a few percent. The SERS pension fund assumes a rate of return, so to speak, of 8.25%. So there's a difference on what the pension is earning versus what the annuity provides as a benefit. And so in order to use the traditional annuity fund, there's a discount that the individual has to deal with. The plan's actuaries have taken into account the differences between what the SERS pension fund is supposed to earn and what the TIA traditional annuity guarantees. And so here you can see the rate chart based on that 10-year payout time that the TIA contract allows. So putting this in simple terms, if you have $100,000 in your TIAA traditional annuity and you want to use that $100,000 to purchase SERS time, buying it over 10 years or discounting it over 10 years, looking at that 16.5% discount rate, that $100,000 is only worth $83,500. And that's how the state's going to calculate it in terms of using that money to purchase SERS service credit time.